Good morning, or it's great to see you all again. Can you all hear me all right through the mic? Because we want to make sure that that works. Thank you for the introduction as well. It's been really enjoyable to be part of the service so far. Valerie and team for leading us, and the AV team, and for the prayers, for the opening passage from Scripture. It's been wonderful. And actually, they're all relevant. Isn't God good? Because sometimes we didn't rehearse this, we didn't plan this, we didn't confer beforehand, but it's great to see and hear and read what's been going on, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a minute. We're starting a new series. All right, we start a series on the Sermon on the Mount based on the record that Matthew gave us, or the people who wrote the book of Matthew wrote down and recorded for us. So today is day one. For those of you that are familiar with the Sermon on the Mount starts with the infamous Beatitudes. Anyone here heard of the Beatitudes? Hands up if you heard of the Beatitudes, yeah? Most of you have heard of the Beatitudes. But surprisingly, just because Manoj loves the odd twist at times, we're not starting with the Beatitudes. In fact, we're going to skip the intro and go straight into the first bit of application of the Sermon on the Mount. But I'm going to read for you in a moment all of the Beatitudes because they're helpful context. They're helpful things for us to remember. They're helpful things for us to know who we're meant to be in whatever interactions we have with people and planet. So it's not just about being at work. It's not just being about family. It's not just about being in church. It's every interaction that we have with another human being and with the planet around us. Jesus is setting out his manifesto. It was delivered early on in his 3-year ministry. Exactly when? Not entirely sure. But we do know that it happened after his temptation in the wilderness. We do know that it happened shortly after he got going and people started to recognize him, because we're told that he delivered it to his disciples, the 12 really, and a bunch of other people, because crowds were following him. So he'd already been doing some miracles. He'd already been causing people's heads to turn. He'd already been making a splash, as it were, and people were beginning to notice. They began to notice what he did, so that when he spoke, they started to listen to what he said. And Jesus was setting out his manifesto. Jesus' whole sermon, his whole predisposition, if you like, his whole purpose is to say, the kingdom of God has come. Now I want you to respond and do something about it. So if you read Matthew 4, just before I'm about to read Matthew 5, you can track this through. He's been tempted in the wilderness by Satan and he's come through the enormous pressure of feeling evil around him. God has sustained him. He then goes back to learn that his closest supporter at that time and cousin, John the Baptist, has been put in prison. Some of the earthly support that he was expecting was evaporating. But he cracks on with his Father's will and says, do you know what? The reason I'm here is to bless you in this way, because the kingdom of God has come. And he starts to do the miracles, crowds around him, and they start to follow. And he's taking this opportunity to sit down and explain to his disciples and those that could hear around him in Galilee, in the land of Israel, what it is he expected of those who wanted to follow. He'd recently chosen the core 12. He'd started to name who they were. And what he was doing was starting to say, if you're going to follow me around this place, I want you to know what I expect of a follower of Jesus. So if this morning you are a follower of Jesus and you claim to be a follower of Jesus, what I'm about to say, which is repeating and explaining what Jesus said to those first followers of Jesus, this applies to you and it applies to me, because I claim to be a follower of Jesus. And therefore it applies to us all, if you are a follower of Jesus. Because you see, at that time, there were people who were curious. They were people who were admirers. And there were people who just wanted a good, wholesome meal. And what Jesus in the end wanted was people to know that this wasn't just coming along for the ride. You had to get involved If you're going to embrace him, it meant that you had to respond and go and do likewise. So this morning, this is not for the shy and retiring. It's not for the secret. It's not for those that prefer to just sit at home. This is for those who want to get out and say, do you know what? I am prepared to go and do likewise. Can I have AV team? Would you help me, please? John, you read for us and we said together the Lord's Prayer. Could I have up the first stanza of the Lord's Prayer behind me as I speak to you for the next 20 odd minutes or so? Perfect. Just leave it as that. Can we all read that and take it in as we say it together again? I'm going to turn round, not because I'm turning my back to you because I'm rude. I just don't want to get the wrong words. All right? So let's say this again together. All right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That sums up Jesus' life. He came to do his Father's will. Manoj read about it in Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 to 11. He came to do something and became obedient to death and death on a cross. And we celebrated that if we're Christians and Jesus followers last week together, didn't we? He died on a cross, he rose again, and that is the whole reason that we celebrate. And it's great timing that we start a new series today, thinking about what God did in Jesus and what Jesus did for us. We sang about it. And 7 days later, he's asking us, so are we going to fulfill the mission? The message giver became the message on the cross. Someone who laid down his life for his Father. Your will be done, not mine, he said in the garden 3 days earlier. So I ask you this morning, as a follower of Jesus, if that is what you claim to be, where are you in terms of the opening stanza to this prayer, which actually you can find in Matthew chapter 6, a few verses on from what I'm about to read. Luke records it also in his version and his summary of the Sermon on the Mount. Now I'm going to read to you now. I'm only going to read to you the first part of the sermon. We don't know if this is one sermon delivered in consecutive words. Is it a contiguous bit of teaching, or is it snapshots and excerpts from different parts of Jesus' teaching over time? I don't know. The good news is I'm not going to go on as long as it probably took to tell the people first time round. But here we go, all right? So I'm going to read Matthew chapter 5. If you have a Bible, whether it's on a device or a bit of paper in front of you, I'm good old-fashioned. I like a book. I like to read from a book, not a device, by the way. If you have a Bible handy, would you turn to Matthew chapter 5? And I'm going to read verses 1 to 16. My core passage is 13 to 16, by the way. But if you can get your hands on a Bible, follow through me. But just actually, guys, could you leave up the Lord's Prayer bit for me, if that's all right, if you don't mind? Please. Okay, so Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 to 16. So this is a record of the events and then Jesus speaking. All right, so it's a bit of both. Seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain. He sat down, which is the way people taught in those days. I'm going to stand. But he sat down with his disciples, and they came to him. And he opened his mouth, and he taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, because they're going to be comforted. Blessed are the meek, because they're going to inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because they're going to be satisfied or filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they'll receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. There's a promise. Blessed are the peacemakers, because they're going to be called sons and daughters of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on account of me. Rejoice and be glad, because your reward is great in heaven, because they persecuted the prophets like that who were before you. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how should its saltiness be restored? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, and nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Actually, let me just read verse 17 as well. Don't think I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I've not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. And that's someone else's territory next week, but that's how we go on. So Jesus gives his manifesto. He sets out what he expects, but he also sets out the benefits. Blessed mean God made you happy. It's the way God makes you happy. It's what blessed means, all right? So when we're talking about these things, when Jesus talks about these things, he's talking about how God is going to make those who follow him feel, all right? You're joining in with his work. You're joining in with what he's like as a character. You're joining in with him. And he's going to transform you on the inside so that you are benefiting and liberated by what he's talking about and sharing, with the purpose of taking it to other people. Why does he say that a light cannot be hidden and should not be hidden? Because he doesn't want you to keep it to yourself. If you have a message, if you have something from the Lord to give to other people, he doesn't want you to sit on it. I want you to sit on your gifts. Doesn't want you to sit on your messages. Doesn't want you to sit on your teaching and understanding. He wants you to go and make disciples. The whole point is the proactive message. It's get out there and do it. Go and do likewise. Don't go and sit at home and hope that someone else does it on your behalf. Go and do likewise, is what he's saying. Get out there, be like it. Show people the difference that Jesus is making in your life so they can see what it's like to be a Christian. They can observe what it's like to be a Christian. They can hear what it's like to be a Christian. What they want to see is authenticity in you, not someone who's decided, you know what, I'm a Christian in Pinner Baptist on a Sunday morning, but not the rest of the week wherever I am. Jesus didn't say in heaven and say to his Father, I hope that someone goes along and tells them that there's a way to be reconciled. He left heaven. The darling of heaven, we sang it, crucified. That was the extent to which he was prepared to go to bring his Father glory. The implication for us all is, how far are we prepared to go? Tomorrow, I have our board meeting. And tomorrow I have to present to our board our new set of values at Ground Control. 3.5 years ago, I started my employment at Ground Control. I'd worked there before as a consultant, but I started my employment at Ground Control. And 3 months after I joined, our new boss started, the MD of the company. We had a new MD. This new guy came in. And we sort of had this plan for about a 5 or 6 year period. And we're halfway through that period now. So about 8 weeks ago, we all got together and we said, you know what, let's just check in, have a half-time talk and see where we are. How are we getting on with our plan and how's it going? Are people with us on the journey, or have they jumped off the bus and forgotten about us and we've forgotten about them? So we decided to do a bit of research. We did some internal things and all that sort of stuff. And we've arrived at a place where we're going to update and slightly modernize our values, because our values resemble our culture. What Ground Control is like on the inside is important because it manifests itself in what we do on the outside. How our customers interact with us, how our suppliers interact with us. And I get the pleasure tomorrow of presenting to our board, all our non-execs and our chairman, what we decided to come up with. We have got 8 things that we define as our values. 8 things we want people to exhibit and live by to personify the culture of Ground Control. What matters to Ground Control is, we've decided, and these are really cheesy, corny phrases, by the way, and you'll be familiar with them all, that we're going to leave the world in a better place than which we found it. Well, there you go. Who couldn't have thought of that one? And why do we do that? It's because we care for the environment. And why do we care for the environment? And theologically, I'm on thin ice now. It's because we want to show human nature at its best. Those are our three straplines. We've decided that the way forward is to help people connect with people and planet by saying the best way to show the best facets of human nature is to care for the environment and show that we're going to leave the world in a better place than which we found it. Actually, the values at the heart of ground control, the culture is pretty good, I have to say, in terms of being a Christian. It's a good place to work. And I'm delighted God has given me the time that I've got there to have the job that I have. Jesus, when he was setting out the Sermon on the Mount, was saying, do you know what? If you want to be my people, what it looks like round here is the 8 Beatitudes. I didn't model the values on the Beatitudes, I promise you, but it wasn't far off. You see, I have an opportunity in my workplace to shape a company that employs about 10,000 people in the UK and Ireland. And I have an opportunity to represent who God is in a boardroom. It's a really unique and privileged opportunity in my life and my career that I'm intensely grateful to God for, and pray that he continues for as long as possible. Because I have unalloyed and unfettered access to influencing an entire company for the UK's largest company in the sector in which we operate. My job is to be salt and light for the Lord in the boardroom. To be salt and light for the people who work for me and everybody that we employ and all our customers and all our suppliers and all the other stakeholders with whom we have to interact. My job is to be Jesus in the boardroom. That is my job. And that is how I see my job. And I pray every day, Lord, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth in ground control as it is in heaven. I pray the same for my family. Lord, may your will be done as it should be in earth as it is in heaven in 78 Headstone Lane, North Harrow. That's where I live. You all know where I live now, and anyone online can record it. And I've completely busted any data protection laws that exist in the country now. But there you go. And my number is... No, I won't tell you that as well. Only managers got that, and my parents were sat at the back. But anyway, apart from that, that's my role. That's my role. Because I take this stuff of following Jesus seriously. He wants me to go and show other people what he's done in my life, to show the transformation. Not just talk about the transformation, but to walk it. But not just walk it, but to talk it as well. It's words and actions, actions and words. You cannot have one without the other. They have to both exist at the same time. Because sometimes you have to show it and sometimes you have to explain it. And sometimes you have to state it and then you have to go and show it. Is your prayer every day you wake up the Lord's Prayer? Think about that opening stanza. Is it still up, my friends? It is still up. Your will on earth be done as it is in heaven. You see, we sang earlier on, high and lifted up, Jesus, Son of God. But we also said he was seated. Very important theological word, seated, when it comes to the Bible. Seated on the throne. You see, his work is finished. We remember that a week ago, didn't we, on Good Friday? What were his words as he finished his life, his earthly life, as people saw it at that point in time? 3 words. What were they? It is finished. He'd done what he was asked to do. He'd completed his mission in terms of making the reconciliation between God and man possible. He'd done his bit. But fast forward to Ephesians and Paul writing to the church at Ephesus, chapter 2, verse 10, we have been created to do good works that God had created for us to do in advance. You see, our work isn't finished. We're still here to work. We haven't yet entered the rest that the writer of the Hebrews promised us. We'll get that one day if we're followers of Jesus. But our job right now is to go and work, to act in his service, to be his people, to be his hands and feet where we need it. He wants us to be. Every day, every day. Everyday stuff, every day. 24/7, 365, or this year 366. You don't get a day off. You get an extra day to bless people around you. Because this year you got February the 29th. What did you do with it? See, he has given us stuff to do. And he wants us to take the transformed personalities that the Beatitudes describe into every situation. Poor in spirit. What does that really mean? Those who know that even if they are marginalised at home, in the workplace, in the shop, down the high street, or they don't get the parking spaces that they should and deserve, they're still going to say, do you know what, I have my complete confidence in God. Merciful, those who know that they've been saved, who know that they didn't deserve to receive God's grace and God's mercy, now act mercifully and compassionately to those who are in need. And aren't so rigid and so arrogant and so proud that they are legalistic in all they do. That's what happened to the Pharisees. We abide by a set of rules. That person should not be part there. How dare they stand in front of me in a queue in Sainsbury's or Marks and Spencer's? Well, maybe they had a need. Maybe their need was trumped your need that day. And who are we to judge and who are we to know? Blessed are the peacemakers. Well, the greatest peacemaker in history was Jesus Christ, as far as I can tell. He proactively seeks every opportunity to bring people together. Now, think your family, think your neighbours, think your co-shoppers, think your workplace. Think where you study. Is that your approach to life? Or you say, do you know what, we don't talk to them. We don't like those neighbours. They never really engage with us anyway. We have bust-ups at work. Often, in fact. 3 or 4 weeks ago, someone at work really let me down and had a go at me. I actually shared this with Badge over lunch, so apologies to manage for repeating this story. It hurt and it was hard. And in my pride, I thought, I'm more senior to you. Who are you to do this anyway? And I thought I could go one of two ways. I can write a really snotty email. I can escalate to his boss and have a moan, or I can pick up the phone and say, can we talk? I'll tell you what I was tempted to do. Well, I won't actually, because you can guess. But I'll tell you what I did do after prayer. I picked up the phone. I said, Matt, we need to fix this. Because there's obviously a running sore there that I didn't understand or even know about, because I'm too thick when it comes to that sort of stuff. And I picked up the phone and we had a conversation. We put it right. I didn't know the next day he was going to be in the office. I saw him in London the next day and he walked round and he come up and shook my hand warmly. And at the end of the day, when he was leaving, he came and knocked on the door of the office I was sat in and said, bye, Brian, great to see you. And then the next week, I got out of him exactly what I needed in the first place. Was that a peacemaking mission? I don't know. But I tried to put right a situation that was going wrong between two people in an office where it could have gone sour and would have taken our teams into different factions with it had we done that. You see, I don't need to hang on to my position. And none of us need to hang on to our position. Because the meek shall inherit the earth. If we are meek, we've already got an inheritance far greater than any material thing we're ever going to be able to own or try to buy in this life. You see, it's the meek, not the weak, that get the deal in the end. All right? So if I get overlooked and someone else gets the credit and someone else gets the praise, but we get the outcome that we need for the company, I'm cool with that. Why is that? Because my confidence is in what God is going to do for me, and the fact that someone else gets the credit doesn't really matter, because it ain't about me, it's about him anyway. Your will be done, not mine, on earth as it is in heaven. If you don't want me to get the credit because you think I'm going to get too proud if I get the credit, cool. Let someone else get the credit. I don't care, because I'm praying that. You see, there are ways that we can take these Beatitudes into everyday life in everyday situations. Some of you will know that I'm a keen walker and that when I get walking, I like to walk fast. But I know that other people find that intimidating sometimes. And I used to get cross when people got in my way. Not that I do nowadays ever, obviously, but I do. It's a silly example, all right? But in my heart, I was exalting myself, saying, "You're so slow. Get out of my way." Now I go, do you know what? And I've really been working on my heart on this in recent weeks. Actually, do you know what? Don't hold your line, Brian. Let them pass and change your line, because I'm going at such a speed that they find intimidating when I'm walking at them. And therefore, some of them decide, you know what, I'm going to harden my heart. I'm just going to stay in the way so that he can have to move. And then it becomes a bit of a daggers at dawn sort of thing. Crazy, silly stuff. But in my heart, I'm exalting myself, saying, I want my way, which is that way. Now instead I go, do you know what? Of course, because they're another person that the Lord loves. And you think, well, what relevance is that? But it's the change inside and the transformation that means that I don't hold on to anger or pride that says, do you know what? It has to be different. Now, you're sort of saying, well, these are all good examples, Brian, and it's all very fine you talking about yourself, but actually it's the change that God is making in me. I'm going to close in a second with a story or an example which actually is to my shame. Because I'm well aware that some of you will sit there thinking, it's fine telling us all these good stories, Brian. You're not a hero after all, and I'm not. It's actually because I am ashamed and because I realise how much I need the Lord and how much I've sinned in my life that I'm actually prepared to talk about this stuff, because it's the difference that wasn't there a few years back that is there now. You see, Jesus calls us to be salt and light. Salt is a preservative, and salt is meant to bring flavour. So as I begin to close and wrap up, start to think about where are you asked by God to be a difference in terms of both preservative and to bring flavour. And what sort of flavour are we talking about? I think it's the sorts of things that are the unmistakable joy that people see in you when you're prepared to let someone else go first and not your own self. Where you're so passionate about seeing his goodness, hunger and thirsting after righteousness, that actually that matters much more than your promotion or you getting your own way at home. Because it's God's goodness that matters to you more than something else. You may well be in a situation, and some of you may well, because I have been here too, by the way, all right? I've been in situations where I've been surrounded by people who are doing things that are clearly not God's work or God-honouring. And what do you do? What do you do? Do you stay or do you go? And you've got a decision to make, because I think everybody has to make their own decision in those circumstances. I can't tell you what to do. But sometimes just the fact that you're there, leading a godly life, however quietly, makes a difference. Do not underestimate the power of Christ in you and the Holy Spirit using you in a preservative sense in a place where you think, my goodness me, it's a pretty godless situation. Do not be afraid to stay if that is what you feel God asks you to do. You will be amazed. I still get called the vicar by colleagues that I worked with 30 years ago, even though I didn't think I was making a blind bit of difference at the time. And I'm not sure how much difference I made, but I still get called the vicar by colleagues that I meet up with that I worked with 30 years ago. Because they knew, even though I didn't realise I was doing it, by the way. So you don't know what impact you're having. The challenge that we all have is if we lose our saltiness, what's God going to do with us? And I'm going to come to that in my actual close in a sec. The other thing is you're meant to be light. All right, you're meant to go and show forth who Jesus is. You're meant to be proactive. It's not good enough to say, well, do you know what? It's not the right conditions. It's not my job. It's not my skill. It's not my gift to not talk about the Lord. I think what he's asking us to do is saying, do it. I've given you my power. I've given you my presence. They go with you. Your job's to get off your backside and go and do something about it, bluntly, and not sit there hoping it's someone else's job. It's your job. Ain't what he's asked us to do, is it? It's your job. It's my job. It is our job to go and fulfill the Great Commission, whoever we are, in our own different ways. Be confident that it makes a difference. One more anecdote before I wrap up, all right? Again, I think I probably shared this with you, man, the other day. But I used to work with a guy about 4 years ago. It was the early start of ground control. He didn't like me, knew that, didn't want to work for me, knew that, got that, understood that, and I don't blame him. No one wants to work for me. But in the end, he said to me just 3 weeks ago, off on a Monday morning, I had to talk to him about something. He needed my help. And he said to me, "How was your weekend?" Classic Monday morning conversation. We chatted, and he said to me, "Brian, what did you do at the weekend?" I've chatted, and he said, "But Brian, you didn't mention that you went to church." I thought, "I know." He says, "But you always talk about church." He says, "Why did you not say it to me?" And I apologised. I said, "I don't know. It's just because I know that you know that, Mark." He goes, "Brian, I wanted you to know that when I was a kid, I went to boarding school, I used to read the Bible. And I'm now starting to think about reading the Bible again. What do you say?" I'd never had a conversation with Mark about the Bible as such. I just told him I went to church. And last Thursday, he left ground control. It was the last conversation I had with him. And I encouraged him to read the Bible. I don't know what he's going to do with it, by the way. But don't be afraid to hang in there. And don't be afraid to say things, because you never know what people remember are going to come back to. Stay salty and stay light, because it's amazing what might happen. And in other events, on another occasion, I'll tell you about a guy who was brought up in a missionary home, Christian home like Lizzie was telling us a minute ago, hasn't paid any attention to it, and he's now 61. And he says, "Brian, it's time to go to the Holy Land. I've started to read the Bible. Can you recommend me a good tour guide? Because I want to go and find out about this stuff." And I've talked to him a lot and prayed with him a lot over the years, the 3 odd years that I've been working with him. There's opportunity for us all wherever we look for it, if we want to go find it. But just so that you know that I'm not too proud, or I'm not just bigging myself up here, by the way, I just put myself on the front line every day with that prayer in my heart and my head, all right? That's all I'm doing. That's all I'm actually doing, trying to remember, all right? So about 7 years ago, I think it was, I used to work with a lady who's a super Christian, a really, really out there Christian in the office, wonderful lady. I really admire her. And I did something at work, and I didn't really think about it. And I persisted doing it, actually. And she came up to me. We travelled home on the train one day for some reason. I have no idea why we were on the train, other than clearly it was a God moment, because she said to me, "Brian, you know those things that you keep doing?" And I sort of looked at her quizzically without actually saying a word. And she goes, "Do you realise how much shame you're bringing to Jesus in this office by doing what you're doing?" That was a mic drop moment, but in a bad way. So I don't get it right all the time, far from it. And I've not got a pure copybook here, by the way, either. So please don't think, because I've told you a few good uns, that there ain't plenty of bad uns in my checkered history as well, all right? But I'm very thankful for that lady who pulled me up. What did I do with it? Apart from being angry and insulted initially, I did go away and pray about it. And I repented in the end, because I realised what I was doing. Actually, it was what I wasn't doing, in fact, in that case, but it was what I wasn't doing. So if you lose your saltiness, what's the way to deal with it? To do what John said in his prayers, to go back to the Lord and say sorry, because he's faithful and just and will forgive you and cleanse you from all your unrighteousness and put you on the right path again. So if you recognise that the stuff that you need to deal with the Lord this morning, let's deal with it now. You have an opportunity. I'll be quiet in a minute, you'll be pleased to know. I'm going to finish, all right? But I'm going to give you a minute just to have a contemplation. Have a think about being made salty again if you're not, or you recognise there's a few gaps. And if you're not as light as you should be and you're hiding a bit under a bushel because you're a bit unsure, you're a bit ashamed, or you're a bit cautious, let's not be anything other than bold and courageous, because you know what? This world needs light. We're not going to change the heart and mind of Putin, by the way, because that isn't going to happen because of you or I individually. But let's not be shy or lacking confidence about the difference that we can make and how God uses that, because you came to the Lord somehow yourself. And other people are going to come to the Lord through you too. So let's not hide or be scared or timid in any way, but let's go to him and say, "Help me either do more or restart and hit refresh and go again." if that's what you need to do this morning, because some of us will be in both camps, and some of us may not even believe for the first time. But if you want to see a difference in your heart and your life, let me finish with this anecdote. I had dinner with a former colleague on Wednesday night. He's a very senior and esteemed yoga teacher, actually. And so it's quite an interesting conversation with him. He's an Orthodox Jew who's a yoga teacher, which is a bit of an interesting dilemma. But what he said to me was, he talked to me about how he helps people. And he said to me, Brian, remind me, what is it that you believe and why? Great opportunity. Get ready for every opportunity that comes along. So I told him the gospel. And we talked about things, including forgiveness. And he goes, what do you mean, getting rid of all those negative feelings inside and all the negative thoughts that you got going on in your head and just making yourself feel good again? I said, well, sort of a bit like that, Pete. Yeah, it's a bit like that sort of thing. He goes, well, I get there through yoga, but I get there by doing it once a week. And the difference, I said, Pete, but the difference between you and me is this. When Jesus Christ did that for me, he did it once for all. I don't have to carry the negativity and the guilt with me every day. You have to every day go and get yourself into a certain mental space to cope with the fact that there's guilt and shame and negative stuff in your head and your heart and your life. And therefore I go free. You're not free of the need to come and do something about it time and time and time and time again, and it's a never-ending cycle that you have to keep on trying to get yourself into a place where you feel good about yourself again. And we had a good conversation about it. But the freedom that you have as a Christian is a difference. The freedom that God has given you inside, the liberation and the flourishing that you have on the inside makes a difference to people. And it was stark contrast between Pete, who is a really good guy in many ways in helping so many people on the planet. He does really good work, actually, for helping people who are suffering in, well, mental well-being as well as their physical well-being. But it just struck me how much more we have to take as light to the world, the reflection of Christ in us to other people, when we've got something to offer that they don't need to keep striving for, but can just receive through gifts or the gift of God and grace. So let me pause there. I'm going to finish. And I'm going to ask God to speak to each one of us, me included, by the way, because I know I can sound terribly proud and terribly arrogant. And hopefully for those of you that know me personally, it's not that. I'm just trying to be passionate about the God I love and serve and what I pray every day. And that is a prayer I've prayed for the last 4 years. And my prayer is just so that you know that I do become more like Jesus, and that at the end of this decade, there's going to be millions more Christians in this country than there were at the start of this decade. And I started that prayer in October 2019. I don't know if the Lord's going to answer, but I pray he will. Will you join me in that prayer too? Please. It's our job as Christians and as followers of Jesus. We're going to get inundated with political manifestos in the next few weeks and months in this country. Never lose sight of the manifesto you have from your Lord and your leader. So, over to you, Lord, and please speak about the changes that you need us to make in our lives. Lord, you have told us this morning to be salt and light. And I end with this final thought in what you want us to do. And that is the reason and the benefit of being salt and light is this: that other people are going to see what we do and give you glory. And Lord, if my hope and my aspiration, and I pray it's everybody in this room's hope and aspiration, everyone that's watching online, if our hope is to see you glorified, then I need to make sure that I let you reign in my life. And to let you reign in my life, I have to intentionally decide that it's your will on earth as it is in heaven, not mine. So as we've prayed and sung and worshipped you this morning, I ask that in every heart you will be high and lifted up, exalted above all other things. I pray that you will be pleased with what you've heard and what you see in our hearts and minds. And that every one of us, Lord, will be able to sing with the third song that we sung. Here it is, you have my all. Now, before I hand back for the last song, can we just say the Lord's Prayer together again one more time, people? And again, I'm going to turn my back, so apologies. But let's stand in readiness. I think we're going to sing, aren't we, afterwards? So let's stand and say the Lord's Prayer together. And I want to ask you, if you can and want to, by the way, I want to ask you a question before you do. All right? I only want you to say this prayer out loud if this is your intention. And if it is not your intention, God bless you. I understand, because not everyone reacts and responds in the same way. But I'd rather you stood here before God and said it with sincerity than just say it because you felt you were obliged to say it and you know it like the back of your hand. So I'm going to say it out loud because I mean it. Whether I get it right or I get it wrong, I have my bad days too. I do, and I know that. But please only say it out loud. And if you want to lift your hands to heaven like some do and praise God and lift up holy hands in response to here you have my all, feel free to do that too. And I'm going to stand down so people can see past me, all right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Because yours is the kingdom, yours is the power, and yours is the glory forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.